melanin comes from.
Yep.
And that's pretty cool, because Neanderthals, they now think had, well, you're the closest, I think, in the room. No offense, of course. I mean, I'm proud of my Neanderthal, thing. When I go through the airport and I see the Gecko or commercial or whatever one it was where the cavemen are being insulted, I'm like, hey, 1.2% might not sound like much, but that's it's down to like 1.2 to 2% among those that have that background. Plus, my mom was apparently part Sami, the people that live up in the Nordic areas raising reindeer. And boy, when I see pictures of those folks, I realize they look just as ugly as we do. That's us.
Yeah, people actually, I don't understand how we're attracted to other people. Because, think about it, we're things with big things on our face that are the heads, and then, we're just look weird. We're aliens, honestly. We're the aliens of the world. So, the animals and stuff,
Yeah.
we look weird.
I watched the Super Bowl halftime show. Rihanna.
Oh yeah. She looks so good.
And she
looks so good.
Pardon?
She announced that she was pregnant.
Yes,
Yeah.
with her second child.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I was wondering, that's so different than I remembered a couple Super Bowls ago that there was so much female flesh visible in the halftime show. That it was a counter, to the football game,
Ruby's just different.
Yeah, I found it quite interesting. However,
So the last 2 minutes of it.
I'm an Eagles fan, so I had my Eagles hat on, even though I was inside. And the very last few minutes, of course.
I was at work. I was rooting for the Eagles, and I was at work watching it. And I had it on my phone. I was jumping up and down. I was like,
And it's a religious experience.
That last quarter was stressful.
Yeah, I mean, if you think, what's religion? Actually, let me do this as part of. I hid these under class notes, and it's an other item, and it is what is religion? And this is a terrible page because see how it doesn't fit. But yeah, a lot of people do ask, why is religion an issue? Well, remember, philosophy studies everything. If you're in a philosophy department, quite a few of the bigger departments have a religion department as part of the philosophy department. So that's, we have, philosophy of science. I took philosophy of science, philosophy of history, philosophy of religion. Always, a thing, and so trying to figure out what religion is, and most Western culture, folks who are associated with Christianity or Islam, or is it right to refer to Islam as Western? I think so. Yes? No? What's West? If you go west far enough, you're in the East.
You're not wrong.
You're right?
That's right.
And Alaska is the further easternmost of the United States. Did you realize that?
Yeah.
Yes, you've heard the not only are we the further westernmost, but at the point where it is the westernmost, you go over the international date line and it becomes tomorrow. And I was on a Coast Guard cutter that went back and forth over the international date line. I got the little pin for my hat, that says I did that. And because I was a translator, I was on board as an Army translator in case they boarded a Russian you know, fishing boats. But, you know, so we went back and forth, and I remember being like, what day is it? You know, because, you know, we weren't sure. You couldn't keep bugging the captain, where are we? Is it tomorrow? Or, you know, if you're taking a log, you know, you're, yeah, you're,
I'm not.
you know, that's
Yeah.
wrong, you know?
Go back and do February like 23rd twice.
But so,
That'd be awesome. If you like did a mistake, you can redo it. Like if you called your, or you did something wrong with your wife on February 23rd, you could redo it. February 23rd on the other side.
sounds like, oh, what's the name of the Pexitani film, the Groundhog Day? Groundhog
Oh,
Day,
yeah.
the movie.
Yeah, what?
Groundhog Day?
What is ground? I don't.
It's a movie where
Oh,
the guy
movie?
wakes up every day. It's exactly this, you know, and he can't get out of it. I get the impression that even like hundreds of years, this day just keeps repeating and repeating. He can't get out of it. So he begins doing all kinds of crazy things. None of it helps, you know, but finally he does actually do something, and he ends up loving someone else, and the next morning is a new day. It's all- it's not the same day for the first time in hundreds of years.
Sounds awful.
Well, yeah, it's a bad dream. It becomes bad.
The world freezing, everybody like freeze, and then I get to work, you know, do all my catch up on my homework and everything. You know what I mean? I have
That's
to
one
clean
of
my
my
room, like,
favorite
you know what I
superpower,
mean?
like free time.
and then I be all productive, and then everybody else is.
Well, in any case, folks from, you know, the cultures of the book feel like, well, if it's a religion, it's because it believes in God. Well, actually, if you study philosophy of religion, and you think, is Buddhism a philosophy or a religion? Well, but Buddhists don't have a God.
Either do natives. Well, I mean, they do, but they also worship the land.
Yes? Yeah, and if we tie that into what we call the pagan religions, that's, you know, there were gods, thousands of gods, there were like 2,000 Hindu gods. Siddhartha, or the Buddha, sitting under the Bodhi, I believe it's connected, you know, that he's under that tree, and he has a revelation that none of the religions are true, and becomes instead the teacher of how to reach nirvana by escaping all of the attachment to the physical things. Very Platonic, if you think about it, right? You know, this is the prison house of the soul. How do I get my soul out of it without harming myself? Because you know, that's a big issue, of course. You don't think, well, once my soul is released, I'll be in heaven and everything will be better. No, but you're not allowed to kill yourself because God owns the cows. And can you imagine if the farmer came out and the cow had committed suicide? He would be pissed off at the cow, right? You know, God has you here for a reason. You know, that you're not here, he didn't create you, she didn't create you. You know, a lot of people say when God created man, she was only joking.
That's funny.
And God has a sense of humor if God is perfect. So, there you go. Okay. So, my definition of religion avoids that context. And in fact, it's a very open context for me. Belief in what we call a meta-narrative. The story that explains to me why I am here, what my place is in the universe, and how I maintain that place. Remember those three questions that a philosophy really needs to satisfy, right? Who am I? What's my identity? And my identity is a role in a play, a story. All the world's a stage, and all of us merely players, says Shakespeare. And yes, we're in with that, you know. And we have lots of roles, as he points out as well. You know, because I can be a father, I can be a citizen, I can be an Eagles fan, I can, all those things are roles that are niched into the bigger role that, that explains to me why I'm here, how I should try to live, right, to maintain that role, So I define religion as belief in a meta-narrative. And of course, that can change during your life. It probably should if you're in a Western a weird country, remember? Western, educated, industrialized, rich,
Rich, Democrat.
and Democrat.
Democrat.
Yeah. Because you get an education, and the education teaches you to think about thinking, and that puts your identity into question, and your beliefs into question, on purpose, with the idea that once you get to your highest educational level, you are now going to be kind of the supervisor of your beliefs, and try to figure out which beliefs are the best ones for society, and to try to inculcate those in your students in your intro to philosophy class. You see, I have my narrative very clearly in my mind, and what I'm trying to do. Do I learn different things? Do I learn, this was a mistake, but now I can improve it, because I'm trying to get better and do a better job. So that's my definition of a religion. And by the way, if you're a fan of people like Richard Dawkins and others of that sort, the four horsemen of the, four modern atheists, that began their quest after the 9/11 attacks, and thought that it was religion that caused that. If you didn't have people that believed in a religion that would act on those kinds of horrible things, we could avoid that. And they thought, getting rid of a religion would be the way to fix that. By the way, contemporary interviews with Richard Dawkins, he's realized, no, none of that worked. No, people do need religion. That's how to deal with it. Remember, he is a biologist primarily. In any case, there's plenty of other folks out there. One of my favorites I'll mention is Miroslav Volf. This is my favorite of the books that he wrote, Flourishing. He does teach at Yale in the religion department at Yale. Why do we need religion in a globalized world? And I went one with that. But so, paganism, the country religions, non-urban ones, but basically we're still the traditional Roman ones. And the Romans had multiple gods, just like the Hindus, located in a particular place. In fact, the gods were gods of a place. When we go back and you think of El, whoever El was, depending, we have Baal, we have El, and if you put it in the plural, you have the Elohim, because when Abraham is out in the desert and he sees the Elohim, there's three of them that approach him, and he gives them a feast, and the Elohim promise him that he will have an heir who will inherit the land. Right? And he takes that seriously, although his wife Sarai, or Sarah, laughs at the Elohim for promising this, because she's postmenopausal. So there's no way Abraham is going to have an heir, at least as far as she's concerned, right? And so Sarai laughs at God. It's kind of a famous thing. Well, Abraham is serious about it, and so Sarai offers him Hagar, her slave girl, to have a child by. And in fact, he does. And so Hagar gives birth to Ishmael, which I think I understand means God hears him. Ishmael, right? So God hears him. And at that point, though, Sarai is no longer the head wife, because now the woman who has the heir is her slave. And so she tells Abraham that that Hagar and Ishmael have to leave. And so he sends her off into the desert. And of course she's totally distraught because she's all by herself. And so she's running around in a circle from hill to hill while Ishmael is a little infant kicking in the sand at that spot. And while she's running around in a circle, the angel Gabriel comes to Ishmael. There's actually several different versions of the story. And a well bursts forth there. That is Mecca. And that's where every year the people come and walk imitating Hagar in that circle around that spot where that well bursts forth. And the people who follow Ishmael are the Arabs. Meanwhile, Sarah does get pregnant. It's a miracle. And she has Isaac. And Isaac is her firstborn. Now here's where it's interesting, because there's a story that God tells Abraham to take his oldest son, or his only child, or his eldest. How do you translate this stuff? In any case, take him to the holy mountain and bring a knife and a rope and a bundle of wood, and basically sacrifice your son to God. And Abraham is distraught, but he totally believes in God, and so he takes the son up there. The son says, we've got the knife, we've got the wood, but we forgot the sacrificial animal.
He doesn't know.
Doesn't realize he's the sacrifice. But just as Abraham is about ready to slay his son, the angel holds his arm back, and there is a ram entangled in the briars, and he realizes he's been reprieved. He doesn't have to kill his son. Now, of course, the interesting development from this, and there's multiple versions of the story, is that if you're of the Jewish tradition, that this is the heir who will inherit the land, and you're Jewish in that tradition. So the land belongs to the Jews. If you're Arab, Ishmael was obviously the chosen one, and they are the heirs. And guess what? Do we still have people fighting over that land today? We do. Okay. Abraham, believing in God, is believing in a God that is viewed as the vacant seat. Well, that's not going to help. Let's go to I want a specific book, which one. So I had a favorite book years ago. I still have it, although I had lost it. It was the book of J, and J stood for Jehovah, right? And it was, I'll show you that one too. It's, I realize this is possible, right? Raymond Bloom was the editor of the Book of J. And the translation is Rosenberg. And so what was really neat about this book is after the introduction by Harold Bloom, you have a translation of the Hebrew text that is considered by at least some scholars as the original book of Jehovah, or Yahweh, right? And so what's fascinating about it is it doesn't couch it in, most people in English-speaking countries think of which Bible? Which Bible would you pick? Okay. Which one?
So there's more than one King James?
Yes, the King James. I even had a student in my office once. Well, maybe I'm thinking of different students, because the one looked around and said, "Why do you have all these books when you only need one? The Bible." And I was like, "Oh, well, how would you know what the Bible was all about without books about the Bible, essentially, right?" And at least one student, it might have been the same one, thought that, well, the original was the King James version, not realizing that the King James Bible was the English translation that was authorized first by Elizabeth, but then by King James, as you know, he supported the translators who translated that. The earlier version of it, which was the Tyndale Bible, got the translator burned at the stake, because that was too early. And by the way, if you're curious, we have that Bible in the library, in the large bookshelf, and they include in it a picture, a woodcut of him being burned at the stake, just so you know. So you can go visit that and see it for yourself. By the way, we also have the Gutenberg in Anchorage. It's in the Gutenberg is the first printed Bible, right? Which was printed in Latin. And by the way, they didn't space out the words. So even if you speak Latin, it's really difficult. And it's in a 2-volume version, but it was in the Stevens Room in the Luzak, if you ever have a chance to go visit there. In any case, so this was my favorite, but I used to bring it to class and let people, pass it around. And the one time I brought it to class, and class broke up and everybody left, and someone stole the book. That was awful. In any case, I ended up, years later, discovering another copy of it at the library that was being thrown out in the "we don't want these anymore" bin. And I was like, oh, I got it back. But when I had lost it, I was standing when the new Mormon temple was built, and before it was consecrated and it was open for people to come and see it before they consecrated it. I was there to see it, and I was in line behind Beauclair, Dr. Beauclair, who at the time was the APU Newman chair.